Hello from Pittsburgh Undefined. This is Sangeeta, and today I'm going to talk to you about connecting your PirateMIDI Bridge6 MIDI controller to a Meris Ottobit Jr pedal. This process will work for any small box Meris pedals. I've used this process already to set up a Meris Enzo pedal, and what we're trying to do is set up the controller so that it will control all 16 presets that come on a Meris pedal. You can, of course, set up whatever presets you choose. This will just allow you to switch between those presets on the PirateMIDI. So the first thing we need to do is bring up the PirateMIDI editor online, and from there we're going to create a template. We want to create a template for the Bridge6, though this should work for Bridge4 as well. We're going to start with a blank template because we're going to set this all up from scratch. And the first thing I'm going to do to set my project up, I'm going to name these banks. You have a maximum of 16 characters, so I'm going to name it Ottobit Jr. And this is going to be the first 6 patches on this particular bank. I'm going to go to bank 1. I'm going to set this up as Ottobit. I'm going to do 7 through 12. There we go. And then I'm going to go up one more bank. And this is going to be my bank 13 through 16. Now, there are a lot of different ways you can set this up. This is just one way. I'm trying to give you kind of a comprehensive overview. And then at the end of this, we're going to save the template that we create so that you can use this template, and if you want to copy certain things from it, it'll make it a little easier for you. And so now that our banks are set up, we need to program MIDI messages for each of these switches. The idea is that we want to select a switch and have it turn on a preset, a specific preset, and also make sure that it's turning off any other switches that I have on, because I don't want to have switches stay on and have their lights stay on when I'm switching between presets. The way that I like to set up messages is by setting them up on one switch, and I set them up in this software, and then I use the physical device to copy that switch's messages to other switches, or copy a whole bank to another bank, and then come back in the editor and modify parameters that will be different for those different switches or different for those different banks. So here we go. The first thing I'm going to do is set up my first switch. So this is my first bank, bank 1 through 6, and this is foot switch 1. I'm going to call this Auto 1. Okay. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set up my messages. Because the Ottobit is a dark pedal, I'm going to change this LED. I can change the LED color by selecting the LED color. I can go to custom colors, and there's the global custom color I just created, this sort of violet indigo. To create a collection or a string of MIDI messages to turn on a specific patch and make sure that nothing else is turned on, because I need to cancel out or negate any previous patch settings that I've chosen on my Ottobit. I need to be able to turn off a bunch of switches when I turn this switch on, and I need to be able to turn off a preset or reset a preset, which is a program change. So the first thing I want to do when I initially press this pedal is I want to be able to turn off any of the other 5 switches that are in my bank right now, okay? So that's actually what we call a smart message. So I'm going to go down to smart message. The type of smart message is to switch off, because again, I'm switching off switch 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 in case they were previously on. So for example, let's say I had switch 6 activated because I was using preset 6 on my Meris Ottobit Jr. Well, when I select switch 1 to select the preset 1 on my Meris Ottobit Jr., I want to make sure that switch 6 turns off and that the preset changes. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do again is to turn off these additional switches. Now I'm turning on switch 1, so I'm going to leave that alone. I'm going to go down to switch 6, and I'm going to select my primary switch. I'm not setting up secondary switches today. That's going to be another video and another project to set up secondary switches such that you can control specific parameters on any of these Meris pedals. Okay, so I have my primary switch set up, and it's switching off switch 6. I am going to basically repeat this step. We're going to fast forward real quick. The most important thing to keep in mind is to have some sort of system in place so that you know which switches you're switching off. I'm going to turn off switch 2 and then I'll be good. Now, it doesn't actually matter if switch 2 is on when I engage switch 1. If the switch is already off, this MIDI message is kind of just going to go into the abyss. It's not going to do anything. It's going to switch off a switch that is already off. Now, notice how I have this set up. I have it in descending order from 6 to 2. You can set this up however you want. I'm doing this just for clarity because as I go through and copy and paste these messages into other switches, it will be easier for me to see the order of switches that I need to change, which switches are turning on and off. So for example, when I do switch 2, when I set up switch 2, I'm going to change this number 2 to switch 1 because when I turn on switch 2, I don't want to turn off switch 2. I want to turn off switch 1. Okay, so I have 5 press messages, and these press messages are turning off any other switches. All right? Now, I also need some toggle messages. Okay, so now I've pressed the switch and it's toggling the device on. Okay, so I've turned off all the other switches. Well, what do I want to do? I want to turn on switch 1. This is the switch I'm working on. So I need to turn the switch on. And I also need to turn the device on. I need to turn on the Meris Ottobit Jr. So I'm assuming the pedal is off right now. So I want to make sure that the pedal is on, okay? And I also need to choose a patch. I need to choose a preset. So that's the whole point of this particular tutorial is I'm setting up 16 different preset switches. Now, I have 2 options. I can either turn the pedal on and switch the preset in that order, or I can switch to the preset and turn the pedal on. Keep in mind that the Meris pedals receive MIDI data regardless of whether or not the pedal's bypassed. Now, the difference between these 2 options is that if I turn the pedal on and change patches or change presets, you will hear the preset changing from whatever the previous preset was. So even if the pedal was off, let's say I had preset number 6 selected, the pedal turns on. That's the first thing that MIDI says to do is turn the pedal on. And then it changes presets. So you will hear the sound of the preset change, which may or may not be something that you're interested in doing because it provides you with a blend between the 2 preset sounds as it changes. Conversely, you can change the preset sound. So it will change before the pedal is turned on. And then when you turn the pedal on, it will be set at that new preset sound. That's the way that I'm going to set this up right now. I don't want that blending feature. The first thing I want to do is change the preset. The preset change on a Meris pedal is a program change. On my Meris Ottobit Jr., I'm setting it up on channel 2 because my Enzo is set up on channel 1. However, you could set it up however you want. And the program that I'm going to set is going to be program number 1 because I want to turn on preset 1 when I click switch 1. Again, my Ottobit Jr. pedal is running on channel 2. Yours is probably running on channel 1 if you have no other MIDI devices. I'm using some other MIDI devices, and so that's why I have it running on channel 2. Output messages. This is really powerful. You can decide where your MIDI output is going to. In this particular case, I'm using a DIN5 connection, the standard MIDI connection. However, I can just leave all of these highlighted. Just like I was saying before about the press feature on MIDI. When I send a signal to the Flexi port, if the Flexi port is not connected to a MIDI out device, the message isn't going anywhere. It doesn't matter. So I can leave all of those things selected. The beauty of the Meris pedals is that you can also run MIDI through the Flexi port of your PirateMIDI directly into the TRS MIDI input of your Meris pedal. I'm not going to do that because I want to use my Flexi ports for some other features, but that's a possibility. Okay, so now when I press my pedal, it turns off any of the other 5 switches on this bank, and it changes the program of my pedal. Cool. Now I'm going to turn on my pedal. Just go to Custom Control Change. I'm using channel 2, so actually this control change above isn't even accurate. My controller number is 14. That's the number that Meris uses to bypass or turn on the pedal. And I'm going to use the value 127. That is the on value. 64, it's either 64, 65 to 127 turns the pedal on for Meris on controller number 14 as a control change. 0 to 63, I believe, turns the pedal off. So I just use 0 and 127 because then I can just flick it up or down one number. And oops, well, it does usually rotate through, but I guess not in this app. Okay, so now I have my program change set up. This changes the preset on my Meris pedal. To quickly review, I have my MIDI string of MIDI messages that occurs when I press the pedal. It turns off every other pedal. And I toggle on, and when I toggle on, that's going to first change to the first preset on the auto bit, and then turn the auto bit on. Great. So now my pedal turns off all the other pedals, all the other switches rather. This switch turns off all the other switches and changes to the correct preset and then turns the pedal on. I of course need to also turn the pedal off. So I have another control change. I'm running on MIDI channel 2. The controller number, like I said before, is 14. 14 is for Meris pedals bypass effect or engage effect. And the value to bypass is between 0 and I think 64, but you can just stick with 0. Okie dokie. So now we are turning off the other switches. We are setting up our preset. We are turning on our Meris pedal. And when we are done, we can press the switch again, and it will turn off our Meris pedal. All right, now we're going to move this over to the pedal itself and start moving some things around on the pedal. Okay, so I've got the PirateMIDI Bridge6 plugged into my computer's USB port. I'm going to save and close. Now what I need to do is send this collection of settings that I've developed to the device. So I've got my device paired already. If you haven't paired your device or updated the firmware, this would be a great time to do that. So I just need to wait for the banks to synchronize. So that was pretty quick. Okay, now we've set this up. We can see that my banks have come through. I have Ottobit Jr. 1 through 6, Ottobit Jr. 7 through 12, and Ottobit Jr. 13 through 16. You'll also notice that Auto 1 switch is set up. If we press button 2 and highlight button 2 for a moment, you'll notice that when I press button 1, it deactivates 2. If I press 5, I press 1, it's going to deactivate 5. I can turn all of these on, and notice how they don't turn each other off because we haven't set up these switches yet. But as soon as I press switch 1, the process of pressing the switch in is going to turn off these other switches and turn on my switch 1. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to copy everything that I just did on switch 1 to this entire bank. And the reason I'm using the Bridge6 to do this rather than the software is that there's no copy-paste function in the online editor yet. However, it's very simple. to use the device. So I'm going to enter the settings mode by holding switches 1 and 4. And what I'm going to do is change switches, because what I'm going to do is change all 6 of these, or 5 remaining switches rather. Switch 1 is already set up. I've got that good to go. So I'm going to go to switch 2, select switch 2, and I'm going to go back, select copy from, and I'm selecting from bank 0. That's the first bank I set up, and I'm selecting switch 1. So I can save that, and it's going to restart my device. Take a moment. And now you can see I have auto 1, auto 1. I'm going to repeat this process for the remaining 4 switches. I'm going to continue to copy switch 1 and paste it into 3, 4, 5, and 6. So here we go. Fantastic. So now what I've done is I have changed all of these presets so that each one of these switches now has the same function. When I press switch 3, notice how the light is the same as switch 2. Notice how when I press 3, switch 2 turns off. Okay. However, notice when I press the button again, it doesn't turn the switch off. That's because it's using the exact same MIDI messages as switch 1. Now we've finished step 2. We've copied and pasted our basic settings and our setup on all 6 of the switches so that we didn't have to manually input 8 MIDI codes for each one of these. So now that this is done, I'm going to go back to the editor, and I'm going to import now what I just did so that I can tweak it to fix any of the errors in those MIDI messages. So I'm going to go to import, import from device, paired, we're synchronizing, and notice now it's changed all my switches. Awesome. So what do I want to do? I want to relabel some of these switches. So, and I want to fix any of the MIDI messages that are not correct. So the way I'm going to do that, switch 1 is already set up correctly. I'm going to go to switch 2. Now, when I look at switch 2, the first thing I'm going to do is change the foot switch name, just to keep myself straight. I'm going to change my press settings first, because those are the settings that I first set up. So now I'm going to change foot switch 2. I don't want to turn off foot switch 2 when I activate. I want to turn off foot switch 1. Okie dokie. And I'm going to go to the next switch. And this is why I set it up in descending order. It just makes sense to me. And now 6, I turn off 6. Instead of turning off 6, it's going to turn off 1. Okie dokie. Now I can go back to the first switch, and I can do switch configure, auto 1. Switch 2 is auto 2. And the reason I'm changing the names inside the editor is that it's easier than to try to scroll through all of the various screens. Okay, so I have switches 1 through 6 set up. They've all been appropriately named. All of their press functions have been correctly set up. Now I'm going to go back through, so I need to select switch 2, and when I toggle on, I need to change. So we want to leave the control change alone. We're turning the pedal on, that's all we're doing. But the program change needs to change. So preset 2 should be changing to the second preset. So the second switch changes to the second preset. Toggle off doesn't have to change. When we toggle off, we bypass the pedal, so that's not changing. So the only additional change we need to make is to the preset that we're selecting. Okay, so now I've got my entire first bank saved. They're set up, rather. I'm going to send this back to the device, so I'm going back to the Bridge6 one more time. A lot of back and forth. Okay, so now I am back onto the device. Notice that I've got all of these named, and I can check, right? When I switch 5, it should turn everything else off. I shouldn't be able to have more than one of these on at the same time. They're always turning each other off. Now what I want to do is set up my remaining banks. So here's how I'm going to do that. I enter setup mode, and I want to go to my next bank, which is Ottobit Jr 7 through 12. And here I'm going to select template copy, select, and I'm going to select that first bank that we just set up. Boom. Going to restart the device. Okie dokie. I'm going to do this one more time. I'm going to bank up to Ottobit Jr 13 through 16. I'm going to copy template, copy from, bank 0 is fine with me. That's the first one we set up. We know all the switches work correctly. Fantastic. Now, all 3 of our banks are identical. We just need to edit a few more MIDI messages and edit the remainder of the names, which I'm going to use the software to do. So notice now, each of these banks has auto 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Great. So what do I want to do? First, I'm going to make sure that all of these switches are changing to the appropriate presets, and then I'm going to change the names on them. So here we have switch 7, because we've done switches 1 through, or preset 7 rather. So we've done switches presets 1 through 6. Now we're on the next bank of switches. So we're going to do auto 7. And the only message that we need to change, since we've already set everything up, is the program. We just need to change to preset 7. Program change number 7. And we're done. Everything else is already set up. We already set this all up for the other bank. Great. So I can do next switch. And finally, I have switch 6, which is going to become preset 12. And I want to make sure that I change my program. Great. Now this bank is finished. Save and close. Great. Let's go up to our last bank. And again, I just finished with preset 12, so switch 1 is going to be preset 13. And when I toggle it on, I want to make sure that my program change goes to program number 13. Okay. So now all of these switches should be set up to switch every other switch off and turn on the pedal, as well as select the preset that you wanted. Just for the sake of clarity and the tutorial, I'm going to put this here because there actually is no patches on these. And so what I've done is just set up a very simple 4-note loop, and I'm going to run that through the Ottobit so we can hear all of these preset changes taking place. So that's my first bank. Notice how it cleanly switches between each preset. There's no latency sounds. There's no overlapping sounds. There's no sound of a preset changing. Now I'm going to change up a bank. So now I'm in banks 7 through 12. That's cool. And finally, my last bank. And let's see what happens when I change banks. So when I change banks, it's automatically going to turn off the effect. However, there is a setting in global settings that allows you to have carryover between banks. I didn't want that because I want to be able to switch between presets and do that with the sound off. Although it's definitely something worth tinkering with if you think that you're going to be switching between a lot of presets from the same pedal. So, for example, the Enzo pedal is really powerful. It's got delays and ring mods and chorus, and it's got all these other features that you could really set up to work as kind of a multi-functioning mini multi-effects processor. So that's it. Now we have our Ottobit Jr. synced and appropriately set up with our PirateMIDI Bridge6 controller. Again, this will work for any Meris small box pedal, and I'm not sure about the newer LVX pedal, but as far as I know, for all the small box pedal, the same process works. I've used it for the Enzo to great success. From here, once you've got everything set up, what's really cool is if you want to start changing the presets on your Ottobit, you just do it like you normally would. And because the presets aren't being saved on the PirateMIDI, they're being saved on the Ottobit, the new presets that you select or set up will stay that way. So for example, if I want to change this button, let's say, it's doing this sound right now, but I want it to make a sound like this. Now when I do my normal hold, save, okay, it's going to actually save the preset to preset 8 inside the Ottobit. So when I change, it's going to be that sound again. So that's the new sound I set up. That's not the original preset sound. And there you have it. Good luck. Feel free to leave comments or suggestions. If you have any questions about this process, feel free to shoot a direct message or leave a comment. And please subscribe. We try to release a lot of different content here at Pittsburgh Undefined. Thanks for your time.